right? Champagne glass are not made for hot soup, and definitely not a liter of hot soup. And so the same thing would happen in Salesforce. If you're turning a number into a checkbox, it's not really, it doesn't really work. It works in the sense that you can change the data type, but the numbers that were originally in the number field, meaning the data in that field, they're gone. You would lose them. Okay. And of course, if you delete that custom field, you also would delete everything that is in that field. That is like if I take my ginormous mug and I accidentally drop it, right? It would fall on the ground, it would splatter into 1,000 pieces, and everything that was in that mug would no longer be usable either. Just like with our field. Now it says here, deleted field data are stored for up to 15 days. Up to. Don't trust that in 10 days it's still there. Okay. What questions are out there about fields? Awesome. Okay, so now that we talked about standard fields and custom fields, we need to start thinking about how do we make those fields available for our users? How can they actually see those fields? And the way we do that is through the page layouts. So the page layout control the fields, the sections, the related list, as well as the buttons. And so let me bring this over again. And let me actually go to the account. Although the same is technically true for the contact as well. So it doesn't want me to go to the account. Hello, account. Anyways, it doesn't matter. We could just stay on Roger. That is same concept. We have all of these fields here. Oh, it finally switched over. Okay. So we have all of these fields right here. And the page layout controls the location of these fields. So it controls, for example, that the billing address and the shipping address are right next to each other, or that the phone and the fax number are right below one another right here. The page layout also controls the buttons right here in the upper right-hand corner, and it controls the related lists here as well. So all of that is controlled by the page layout. Now, if you step back one step and you really take a look at this entire record right here, you see that there's actually more to this. Right over here on the top, there's this very long box, right? That's my highlights panel. Or right over here, there's like activity and chatter. That is another component. And so that is not controlled on the page layout. That is controlled on the record page. Let me go to the record page. And that record page is in the Lightning App Builder. So you open up the Lightning App Builder, and that is where you can find the record page. And the record page controls the components. So over here on the left-hand side, we have all sorts of standard components. If I scroll down, I might even have some custom components here. So lots of components. And I can basically just grab a component. Oops. Yes, I know. I can grab a component and I can drag it onto my record page. And once I let go, then it plops it right in. Now, when I'm on a component, I then from here can modify and make some changes to that component. And it really depends on the component itself. So if I click on this component here, then I have other customizable options versus if I click on this component right here, you know, I have other things. And then if I go to the details, and I click into the details, then you can see it's telling me, hey, if you want to make changes to that, you do need to go to the page layout. So the page layout and the record page, they are working hand in hand to, in the end, determine what my users are seeing and how they are seeing the information displayed, all of those fields and those buttons and whatnot. All right, what questions are out there about the page layout and or the record pages? Okay, let me move on to the next slide here real quick, which really talks about the record page that I just showed you and the page layout. And then let me admit to you that I just lied to you. No, not really lied, but hold on. Let me bring in my screen again. So on the exam, dynamic forms is fair game. Okay, and I don't have a slide for it, so that's why I always show this. So I was just telling you that if you go to the details and you click into it, you can say, hey, you need to go to the page layout, right? The page layout is where we can control those fields. And so technically I didn't lie to you. However, you are able to upgrade now to dynamic forms, and it is a generally available feature now, and that's why it is fair game on the exam. Upgrading is really fast. You basically just say, yep, I really would like to upgrade. Thank you so much. And yep, I really would like to upgrade. Thank you. Finish and done. I just upgraded to dynamic forms. So what does that mean? That means that, whoa, I do have control over those fields now. So if dynamic forms is enabled, then a lot of the features that we needed to do on the page layout, they have now transitioned into the Lightning App Builder, and I can now move those fields to different places. I can add additional fields. Right over here are fields. I can add blank spaces. I can make a field read only. I can make a field required. So a lot of the things that we used to only be able to do on page layouts, we can now do in the Lightning App Builder. Now, the reason why this is called dynamic forms is because of that set field visibility and that you can add a filter here. If you're working on the page layout, then it's either on the page layout or not on the page layout, that field, right? That's it. Those are your only two choices here. Dynamic forms allows you to show this field dynamically, show this field based on this filter. And the filter criteria that you can add are either based on the record itself. So for example, if you have a phone number, then show the fax number field. That one isn't, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I don't know. Maybe if the industry is manufacturing, then I need to know the annual revenue. So then show the annual revenue field. And even that is not super, super realistic. But you can dynamically now show these fields. Now, you can either have these filters based on the record itself, or you can have it based on fields on the user record. So you can say, show this annual revenue field only to users that have manager in their role name, or that have Tom as the manager in the manager field, something like that. And so that is how we can dynamically make fields available and not as static as on the page layout, where it's either on or it's not, but you can't base it on a criteria. And as I said, I don't have a slide for it, but this is basically dynamic forms that you can upgrade to. All right, any questions to dynamic forms?
Could you show how you got to that app builder page again?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So technically speaking, you could just go to setup and then search for app builder, but I find it easier to, yeah, so much for, can you quickly show? I cannot quickly show. Oh, come on. Anyways, if you in the front end go to a record, like look at an account or look at a contact, and then in the setup menu, you can edit the page. So I am looking at an account right now. And let's say I have this vision that I want to add a flow component up here. I can just go right here to setup. And then right here is my shortcut to edit page. And that opens up the Lightning App Builder. Now, technically, I could go also in the setup menu and then quick find Lightning App Builder and then find this particular page. But the edit page is just a shortcut to get to it much faster.
Okay, that's how I get to it is that edit page, but I didn't know if it was the same thing.
Ah, yes, yes. It's really the fastest and easiest.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. Any other questions? Okay, well then I have some questions for you. Now, these questions are maybe not something that we have already discussed, but remember, the assumption is that you kind of know all of those things already. So I want you to use all of your Salesforce knowledge to answer those questions, okay? Well, first question is, Northern Trail Outfitters has custom pick list fields called company and product on the case object. An admin wants users to see different pick list options in the product pick list field, depending on which value they select for company. How can this be accomplished? How can this be accomplished?
Dependent pick list
Relationship
fields.
needs to be.
I think that was unanimous. I believe that was unanimous. And yes, it is a field dependency with that dependent pick list. Perfect. So we would create that field dependency where we would make the company the controlling pick list and the product the dependent pick list. Very good. All right, number 2. Northern Trail Outfitters would like to delete a custom field they had previously created on the case object. What should they consider before deleting that field?
Whether if there's any data that they need to preserve.
Yeah,
historically.
exactly. What about the data that is in that field, right? What are we going to do with that? So definitely big consideration. If we delete the field, everything in the field will be deleted as well. Is there anything else?
Make sure there are no dependencies that could fall apart if the field is removed.
Oh, that is such a big one. Yes, those field dependencies, meaning where else is that field used? Is that field used behind the scenes in flows, in email templates, in Apex code, in some automation process and whatnot? Where else is that field used? In formulas, that's another reason. So definitely, before you delete that field, think that through and think, where is that field used? Perfect. All right. Number 3, Northern Trail Outfitters has custom fields called has support plan, which is a checkbox, and support plan expiration date, which is a date on the account object. They would like to show these 2 fields on all case records. How can this be accomplished?
Would it be like through a related object or a relationship?
Good idea. Good idea. No. So when there has to be a relationship though to actually make the magic happen. So it's not all the way wrong. But here we're talking about the account object, and we want to show it on the case records. So the relationship between the 2 objects is already there, right? It comes out of the box. Now remember that lollipop lookup field, all it can show you is the name of the parent. We don't care so much about the name of the parent. We care about the has support plan and the support plan expiration date, which is information on the parent, but it's not the parent name. So a lookup field can only show the name, not anything else. And therefore, that's not how we can show that. But you're really close.
I mean, if we were using Lightning App Builder, wouldn't it just be a display and then we could filter that related list though? Or are we wanting to go through a page layout?
Good point. So neither of those 2 options would work because it is on 2 different objects, right? And so the information right now lives on the parent, and we would like to display that on the child. Now remember, when we're on the parent, we will see the related children, but we want to look at the child and see information from the parent. So we can't do it through a related list either. Ah, very good. It is called a cross-object formula. Fantastic, yes, because with a cross-object formula, we can pull information from parent and pull it down and display it on the children. Now, let me send you a chat message. Here you go. So I strongly recommend that for the exam, you look through what I just sent you and really understand the differences between those through features: cross-object formula versus lookup field versus roll-up summary field. And the reason why I say that is because there is a lot of different kind of flavors of this kind of question, this number 3 question that we just went through, right? Blah, 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 here's your requirement, blah, blah, blah. And then they have answer A, lookup field, B, cross-object formula, C, roll-up summary field, D, something that is obviously incorrect. And so I don't know what kind of scenario they will throw at you, but keep in mind that a lookup field creates a relationship between 2 objects, but the lookup field itself can only display the name of the parent, nothing else. If you wanted to see something else, then it depends on where this information lives right now. If the information lives on the account object, on the parent object, and you want to pull it down to display it on the child, you want to go with a cross-object formula. If the information lives on the child and you want to roll it up to the parent, then you would need to go with a roll-up summary field. Now, roll-up summary field has some other special considerations. Roll-up summary fields only work in master detail relationships. And roll-up summary fields summary is rolling up a value, a numeric value. So a roll-up summary field cannot roll up text, right? Because I can't add text or I can't multiply text. And so roll-up summary is always a numeric field. All right. So that's why I sent you the chat message with those 3 options. Make sure that you understand the different use cases for each. They're not used interchangeably. They all have, slightly different variations as to the use cases, so that whatever scenario they throw at you, you can pick the right one. All right. Typically, I'm not a fan of you memorizing something, but honestly, in the real world, you very quickly would realize if you use the wrong one, right? If you create a lookup field and you're like, oh, never mind, I only can see like my lollipop, and in there I can only see the name of the parent. Never mind, that's not the right one, and you would just delete it and try again. But you don't have that on the exam, so that's why you want to study this for the exam. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, then here are more Trailhead modules. And that leads us right into the apps. Now, as I mentioned before, the apps here are put together into one lesson. And here's Rose again. And this time, Rose is telling us, hey, the sales and marketing teams are always looking for new tools to get new customers and close deals faster. What else can we configure with our sales and marketing team's efficiency in mind? And so this is just a quick review of some of the things that we've already talked about, right? We already talked about campaigns and what campaigns are, and that through that campaign member object, we're basically making sure that we can have leads, contacts, and person accounts assigned or associated with multiple campaigns. So we're kind of mimicking that many-to-many relationship. And I kind of want to call it a junction object, but because this is a standard object, the campaign member object is a standard object, I'm really biting my tongue and I'm not calling it a junction object, right? Because it's a standard object. And the definition for junction object is that a junction object is a custom object. All right. Now, what's new on this slide is bringing in the dollar amounts. Remember earlier when we talked about security, I was talking about that ROI report, that return of investment report that our marketing team has to run. Well, there's two ways that we can associate dollars, or we can have that association between campaigns and opportunities. Remember, opportunities is where we're keeping track of the sales deals and the dollar amounts. So the first one is that we can track the influence of multiple campaigns on a single opportunity with the campaign influence related list. So in that related list, we can basically see a list of all the campaigns that touched this opportunity. And then maybe even more important, the primary campaign source field. So that is a standard field on the opportunity object. It's not added to the page layout by default, but you might want to add it if you want your users to see this. And the primary campaign source field is the field that specifically points out the last campaign that touched the lead before it turned into that opportunity that it is now. And so that primary campaign source field is also what makes the dollar amount from the opportunity be attributed to whatever campaign is in that primary campaign source field. So if the Q1 spider email campaign is in that primary campaign source field on the opportunity, and that opportunity is worth $5,000, then those $5,000 from the opportunity is attributed to that Q1 spider email. And all of this, as I said, comes out of the box. There's really not much that we need to configure. I mean, if you want to have it visual for your users, you can add the field to the page layout. But even if your users are not seeing the field, the calculation and the population of the dollar amount is still happening. So technically, you don't even really need to do anything there. All right, any questions about dollar amounts and how they're assigned to those campaigns? Well then, let's talk about lead conversion. So earlier I explained that a lead is basically business card information, right? That we got through that fishbowl because we were giving away a car. And when we are having this lead, then we need to qualify that lead. And every organization should have some kind of qualification criteria, basically questions that you're asking to figure out, are you serious? Do you want to buy? Or were you just, coming by, giving us the business card because you wanted to win the car and you really don't have budget or interest in our product, right? So we kind of need to identify the qualified leads. So let's say that we ask those qualification questions and we realize, oh yeah, they're really serious. Then we want to convert that lead. Converting that lead is really simple in Salesforce. You basically just press the convert button, and then Salesforce will take that lead and convert it into, or turn it into, an account, a contact, and optionally an opportunity. So when we have this lead, again, think of it as business card information, right? Then we have the company name on that business card, and the company name turns into the account name. Now, we also on the business card have first name, last name, email address, phone number, you name it. Those things are pushed to the contact, and the contact will be created right under that account. And then, as I said, optionally an opportunity. So far, so simple, so straightforward. Now, usually when we are going through the lead conversion, we're asking questions like, what region are you in? What product are you interested in? And whatnot. And that is valuable information that we actually want to capture. So therefore, we create some custom lead fields where we can put in that information and those answers that we're getting from this lead. Now, when my user is converting the lead in the end will go away because all of this information is getting pushed to the account, contact, and opportunity. And all our standard fields are already mapped, but our custom fields are not, because we custom created them, right? And so the system wouldn't know what to do with those fields. So what you want to do every time you create a custom lead field you want to create a custom field either on the account or the contact or the opportunity, and then map those two custom fields so that when your users are converting the lead, information from that custom lead field knows where to go. And it is then pushed into that custom field that you also created either on the account, the contact, or the opportunity. If you do not do that, then you're losing information, you're losing data, you're losing the information that is in that custom lead field. And here, you actually will not receive any reminder, any error message, any warning, or anything. So voluntary homework for you all is log into your Salesforce org and double check that if you have custom lead fields, that those custom lead fields are mapped to another field, either on the account, the contact, or the opportunity. Okay? Just because you don't get any reminders, you don't get any warnings if you don't have the mapping, and you're basically, as your users are converting those leads and those leads go away, the data that wasn't mapped is just gone too. All right. Any question about the lead conversion? Order mapping, for that matter. Okay. Perfect. Then we have some additional sales productivity tools. And I know we're not even on the productivity lesson yet, but these are productivity tools that are very specific to sales, to the opportunity management. And the first one is forecasting. Forecasting is basically pulling information from the opportunity object and displaying it as the opportunity pipeline. And it allows you to track your progress towards your goals, company goals, team goals. In the forecasting, you can also drill into not just your team, but then also individual team members and whatnot. And if your team members have sales goals, we call them quotas, and you have the quotas set up in Salesforce, meaning the individual sales reps and what their goals are quarterly or yearly, however you set up the quotas. You can see those quotas in the forecast as well. And the forecast can actually calculate the quota attainment, meaning how close are you in meeting your quota. And I remember when I was a sales rep, I definitely had quotas. And back then there was no forecasting or quotas, but that would have been super helpful because I always try to use reports. And again, half of the information wasn't even in Salesforce, like quotas, so I couldn't really see it. Now you can actually see all of this information right in Salesforce. So really awesome. Then we have the sales path. And the sales path really has two benefits. Let me show you at least part of it. I don't think it's fully set up here, but the sales path is on the opportunity. Oh, there's no opportunities here. Okay, let me go to an opportunity. And for one, it is a visual representation of the status field. So that's the first part of the sales path. And that is something that I can very likely show you. Right here. So this is part of the path. And this path, as I said, is a visual representation of the stage field. So you see value proposition, and that is where we are right now. Before we were at needs analysis. And if we're done with value proposition, we're moving on to ID decision maker. Let's do that. Mark the stage as complete. I click on that, and you see I'm on ID decision maker, but not just that, I'm also right here on the stage on ID decision makers. I didn't need to click on edit, right here. I didn't need to go to the drop down, select ID decision maker, and then click on save again. All I needed to do is in the sales path right here, click that button. Now, the other thing that is not set up in this org is the guidance piece. So if I would ask you, what exactly needs to happen in the stage value proposition? right here that we have, right? I probably would get 20 different answers. Everybody would give me a slightly different definition as to what value proposition actually means and what we need to do when we are in this stage, and at what point are we allowed to move on to ID decision maker. And then, of course, we would like to probably have some guidance there as well. So the guidance feature allows you to add formatted text to the ID decision maker. So the window actually, or this section right here, becomes a little bit bigger, and then your users, and it's collapsible. So your users can always read what exactly is ID decision maker. We're putting in some guidance as to what are the entry criteria, what are the exit criteria, at what point am I allowed to move forward? And so that guidance piece is really awesome as well. Then we have big deal alerts. And honestly, big deal alerts is no big deal at all, because really it's just an email notification that is being sent out when we have big deals, when we have big opportunities. Big meaning there is a certain amount and a probability, and those two, once they're met, then that triggers the email. That's all that big deal alert is. It's an internal email notification for big deals. Einstein opportunity scoring is using AI to analyze opportunities from the last 6 months, and then it will calculate a score as to how likely AI thinks that this opportunity will close. The score is anywhere from 1 to 99. And that score can be made available to your users, but it also can be used in reports, in list views, and in automation, what their goals are quarterly. Over here on the slide, it says it can be made available in workflows and processes and flows. Workflows and processes has been retired as of 1.5 months ago. So what are the these two what are the are no longer on the exam, and they really have been replaced with flows. And when we talk about automation, I'll just touch on that real quick again. But I just wanted to point out, every time you see workflows or you see processes, just keep in mind that they are retired. All right, then we have the Kanban view, and you already peeked at that when I went to the opportunities here. So typically, when we are going to the tab up on top, then we see a list view. A list view meaning we see a list with all those records. And let me just switch this over to all opportunities so that I have a little bit more. Here we go. We have some more opportunities now. And so the Kanban view is basically a different view where we're no longer seeing it as a list, but instead we see those opportunities represented as a tile. And then from there, we can actually update the information by just grabbing the tile and dragging it into a different column. Plop, right there. And maybe this one too. Grab it and drop it. I don't need to click on edit. I don't need to click on save. I can update the status field by simply grabbing that tile and dropping it into a different column. And that updates the record without me clicking on edit or save. And so therefore that is considered a productivity tool. And then we have opportunity splits. Now, opportunity splits is interesting because it only applies to organizations that are using sales teams. Sales teams meaning teams on opportunities. And think of opportunity splits as giving credit. And to explain it, I'll just use myself again. So remember how I was a sales rep, and the only reason why the company hired me is to bring in sales, right? It was all about the dollars. Like, they didn't really care, at least for me, they didn't care about anything else. If I had my number and I need to sell and bring in the dollars, and then I would get my commission, right? And so whenever I closed an opportunity, I got 100% credit for that opportunity. Now remember, I'm not super technical. I always had to have my sales engineer with me. But my sales engineer also had other jobs, not just, helping with my meetings. But he was also working with the code and also working with the customer. And so the sales engineer bonus was not just based on me making my numbers and the opportunities, but it was also based on code quality and customer satisfaction. And so he only got 25% credit for each of those opportunities that we closed, that I closed, or really, again, I could have not done it without him, so that we closed, really. And the other 75% of his bonus was based on other things. So that's what opportunity split is all about. It allows you to give credit for opportunities, if you will. But again, it only works if you have sales teams enabled. All right, and then here is Rose again, and this time Rose is telling us, hey, the accounts receivable department at CloudKicks has been tracking billing issues using the same legacy system for their support teams, or that their support teams use to track customer cases. They've documented what they track. Can we set up a similar system using Salesforce? And the answer for right now is no. Why not? Well, because we first need to clarify record types and the use case for record types. And then we need to clarify something else, and then the answer becomes yes. So record types in Salesforce have two reasons for its existence. Record types are used when users need to see different page layouts, and record types are used when users need to see different pick list values. Okay, so that's what the record type controls: page layouts and pick list values. So the use case here is that when we're talking about an object, like the account object, for example, then there's a lot of different types of accounts, right? Yes, of course, there's customers, but then there's partners, and then there's vendors, and maybe competitors, and you name it. And so just to keep it simple and to keep it the slide, let's say that under accounts, we have distributor accounts and we have supplier accounts. Very different, right? If you think about distributors, then we usually group distributors into territories because we don't really want distributors to compete with one another. And so they have like a dedicated territory in which they work in. And therefore, we probably want to have a territory field on the page layout where we can put the information in what territory they're responsible for. Now, if we're thinking about suppliers, then there's no territory. Like, suppliers are typically not organized in territories. Suppliers are based on, the product quality and maybe the support that they offer and of course the price, but it has nothing to do with territory. And therefore, we should not show the territory field for suppliers. And so what we can do here is we can create two different page layouts, one for distributors with the territory field, and the other one for suppliers that does not have the territory field. And so now that we have two different page layouts, we need to make sure that the users are selecting the right one and using the right one, seeing the right one. And the way we do that is through record types. So with the distributor record type, we're showing the distributor page layout. And with the supplier record type, we're showing the supplier page layout. Now, the second reason is the pick list values. And right here, you can see the industry field. And this industry field is on the distributor record type, but it is also on the supplier page layout and record type, right? But the pick list values that you see in the industry field, those are different. So the pick list values for the distributor record type is all those pick list values, right? But if you think about our suppliers, the industry is a lot more important, right? If we're not selling electronics, well, then the electronic industry right here shouldn't be an industry. That maybe we're selling into the electronic industry. And so therefore, for our distributors, that might be important, but not for our suppliers. So even though we're showing exactly the same field, the pick list values that are visible are different. And that is controlled through the record type. Now, what questions are out there about the record type before I throw a curveball at you?
With record type, other than for pick list values to make sure those are managed right, why would you choose to do that instead of just doing a dynamic page layout from the Lightning app?
Ah, great question. The dynamic pages or dynamic records or forms is a fairly new feature. It has been around probably not even for a year, whereas record type has been around forever. So if you're new to Salesforce, then yeah, maybe you would want to go with dynamic forms instead of record types. But a lot of times, either the pick list values, that is not something you can control through dynamic forms yet, safe harbor statement, or because you already have record types and you don't have the time right now to do this big transition project to enable dynamic fields and then set up all the dynamic rules. That's why you would want to stick with record types for now. But yeah, very, very good call out there. All right. What other questions are out there? Okay. So here comes the curveball. And remember, record types have two reasons for its existence: page layouts and pick list values. Security, by the way, not on the list, right? Record types is all about the view. It's not about security. Anyways, curveball. And that curveball is, come on, slide tech. Oh, I had such a nice build-up. I don't know what's going on. Move on to the next slide. Come on. Let me see if I can do the drop down. No, it's just completely frozen now. Ah, there it is. And no. Of course, it went too far. Hold on, let me go back. Here is finally my curveball. Oh, my goodness. It went the other way around the earth to finally get to us. A real curveball. So the curveball is business processes. If you want to create a record type for opportunities, cases, solutions, or leads, you will have to create a business process before you are able to create a record type. It's a required field. So that's why you can't do it any other way. You have to create a business process before you can create a record type, but only for opportunities, cases, solutions, and leads. Those are the only 4 objects. Any of the other objects don't have that. It's just those 4 objects. Okay, so what exactly is a business process? The business process controls the pick list values of the status field. And now you're probably pulling out your hair and you're going, Katrin, you just said that record types control pick list values. Why are we now talking about business processes? Well, because this is a curveball. But again, the business process controls only the pick list values of the status field. So on cases, that status field is simply called status. On leads, that is called lead status. On solutions, it's also called solution status. And then on opportunities, another curveball. On opportunities, we're actually not calling that status field status. No, we're calling that status field stage. So there's another exception right there. But anyways, the stage field is controlled by the business process, meaning the stage pick list values are controlled by the business process. The status on cases is controlled by the support process. The lead status is controlled by the lead process, and the solution status is controlled by the solution process. And once you have at least one business process, then you're able to create the record type. And now everything that I explained about the record type is still true. So once you have the business process, then you can create the record type, and the record type controls the page layout, and it controls all the pick list values of all the pick list fields except for the stage/status field, because that is controlled by the business process. All right. Any questions about business processes and record types and page layouts and pick list values? Okay, well then let's put it all together and let's see if this actually makes sense. So remember Rose's request earlier when she said, hey, the accounts receivable has never really worked with cases before, but now they would like to work with cases and they would like to kind of keep track of those billing issues. Now we've already are using cases for product issues, right? But now we want to set up kind of this parallel process really for billing issues. So the very first requirement that we have is that accounts receivable can create and manage billing cases. What do we need to do here? I mean, other than, of course, clarifying managing billing cases, what exactly does that mean? Does that include deleting those cases, or is it just creating and editing? I mean, we would need to ask some questions here. But generally speaking, for number one, how would you approach this?
Profile permissions?
Yes, exactly. Perfect. We need to give them access, right? We need to give them access to cases so that they can actually work with cases, because accounts receivable typically doesn't have access to cases. Perfect. All right. How about number two? The support cycle for billing cases is new, working, escalated, and closed. What do we do here? Yeah, perfect. Very good. Now, this is a perfect example why I don't want you to memorize things as we're going through the slides, right? If you would have simply memorized, okay, business process, and for cases, it's called support process, and it's controlling the pick list values of the status field. None of that is the terminology that they used in this description, right? They called it the support cycle. Well, here you kind of need to add one and one together. The support cycle in Salesforce is a pick list, and it's showing you kind of the life cycle of the case, and the field that we are tracking that in is the status field. Status field pick list values, ding! We need to go and create a business process. So business process is the correct answer. Actually, that is the correct real life answer. The book answer is actually C and A, business process and record type. I disagree with it. But I think the reason why they loop in the record type here is because if you create a business process and then you're not tying it in with the record type, you're just creating the business process, it doesn't do anything. Like, really, it doesn't do anything at all, because my users cannot see it. They cannot see it until you tie it in with the record type, and that record type is assigned to the profile. Otherwise, my users can't see it. And so I think that's why the book answer is C and A. But I agree with you. In real life, I would just go with C, not A. I would just create the business process for now. All right, very good. Moving on to number 3. Billing cases capture the same information as support cases, except billing cases do not contain the bug number or product. What do we do? First thing, yeah, go ahead. Not yet. Think about what bug number is and what product is. Like, how do we capture that? Typically, and then we don't want to do that. But what is the bug number?
Would that just be a custom field?
Yeah, exactly. So those are fields. Those are custom fields. And the billing cases do not contain the bug number or product. So how can we remove those fields? Yes, exactly. So what we actually would want to do is we would want to clone the existing page layout, and then we would want to remove the bug number, and we would remove the product field. Perfect. All right. So now we have a page layout and we removed some fields. Oh, wait, we're not done yet. B, billing cases contain the invoice number and the account credit status. Not something that we typically have on support cases, but we want to add that. So what do? Any ideas? How do we get the invoice number and the account credit status? Those are not things that we have out of the box. Something that we need to create.
Would this be where the custom field would come in then?
Yeah, exactly. So now we want to create custom fields, one for invoice number, one for account credit status, and we want to add those two fields onto that same page layout where we just removed the bug number and the product. Fantastic. Very good. All right. How about C? Account credit status is only visible to accounts receivable and executives. Oh yeah, it's kind of sensitive information. That makes sense. So we created that account credit status field, and then we realized, oh, it's kind of sensitive information. What do we need to do? Perfect. Yeah, exactly. So now we use field level security to control that access. Very good. And for everybody that is now sitting there going, huh? And where exactly does the record type come into play? Well, in the real world, number 4, tie it all together. That is where the record type would come into play. So after you're done with 1, 2, 3, then number 4, which isn't on the slide, but number 4 would be creating the record type. And when you're creating, or as you're creating the record type, you need to determine number 2, the business process, and then you say next, and then you need to determine the page layout that we just created. And then you click save, and then you could, customize pick list values after that if you wanted to, although that's not the requirement. So as I said, the book answer for number 2, they said business process plus record type. In the real world, I would say number 2 is only business process, and then you would add a number 4 where you tie it all together and you would create the record type. And the only reason for that is when you're creating the record type and you don't have your page layout already available, then you basically need to take some other page layout, then you create your page layout, and then you need to go back and fix it. And I don't like to go back and fixing things. I'd like to kind of do it in an order where I don't have to jump back and forth. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns about this exercise?
Did you say again what number 1 was?
Oh, yes. Number 1 was the profile permissions. We need to give them access.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess for working through thinking about the exam and thinking about, we said earlier about making sure it's the best answer, not the first answer. So when you're doing like the dynamic build, I feel like I could accomplish a lot of like C3 with like using the dynamic layouts.
No.
So how would you like weigh out which one would be a better answer? Is it always going back to something that was a little bit older, or how would you justify like if it's a lightning build or not?
Yeah, a great question. So when I read through that 3C, I mentioned, oh, account credit status. Oh yeah, that's kind of sensitive information, right? The reason why I added that is because that is hinting to you field level security versus page layout. There's a difference. Remember, if you are securing a field using field level security / field permissions, then that field, yes, that field is hidden everywhere, including in reports and including in related lists and including list views. They cannot see the credit status at all anywhere in Salesforce. Now, if you are just removing that field from the page layout, or you decide to go with dynamic field and you dynamically hide that field, you're not making it secure. They would still be able to see this field in reports. They would still be able to see this field in related lists and in list views and in other places. So in the end, it comes down to basically the reason as to why. Why do you not want anybody else to see this field? If the reason is because it's sensitive information, then we want to go field level security / field permissions. if you don't want people to see the field because, oh my goodness, they constantly complain about how busy the page layout is and it's so annoying and I can't find anything and therefore I can't get my work done. If that's the reason, well, then we still could use field level security, right? So that it doesn't clutter up their page with reports either. But then that potentially would be a reason to say, okay, fine, I'll take it off the page layout. Then the reason why I'm taking it off is just to make your view a little bit easier. It's not because of security.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but excellent question because yeah, who knows, right? I don't know what they're throwing at you, so that could definitely be a question where they're giving you this hint, right? Hey, this is sensitive information, and sometimes they're not even specifically saying that, like account credit status. Again, you kind of imply, yeah, that's kind of sensitive information. They may say social security number. Well, you kind of put one and one together. That is sensitive information, right? So that's definitely security. If it's something simple like the zip code, I don't know. Well, if the zip code is tied to the credit card information, then maybe it is sensitive information. But generally speaking, just a general zip code, that might not be sensitive
Well,
information.
then why would that be field level security and then not just tied to the profiles permissions? If it was 3C, then if it was for the whole org.
Because field level security is set on the profile. So those two go hand in hand, right? So I'm setting field level security for the profile.
Okay.
I can see you like pulling out your hair. It's like, no, this is confusing.
No, I mean it's just more of like, okay, like if I got that ticket in right now, I'd be like, okay, I probably go to the profile and then change it. So then I'm like, okay, why would I'm trying to make sure I get the logic together of, okay, no, I need to think through field level security because that would be the correct answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. But remember how I mentioned earlier, whenever I say field level security, I try and say field level security / field permissions because it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different click path, but in the end, it's the same thing. So if you go to profile permissions and you change the field permissions and you hit the save button, you just updated field level security. If you go to field level security, you see that change reflected. Or if you go to field level security and you make a change and you hit that save button, and then you go to the field permissions on the profile, you'll see that change that you just made on field level security. You'll see that reflected on field permissions. It's the same thing.
Right.
It's just different click paths.
Okay, so just treat them like they're the same kind of a deal for the test.
Yeah, for fields, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. All right, very good. What other questions are out there? Okay. Well, then here is Rose again, and this time Rose is telling us, hey, the NTO support department will now be taking on cases from CloudKix customers. We'd like to set up a special alert for cases related to CloudKix products so we can be sure customers are getting extra attention and support during the transition. Do we have everything in place that we need? Great question, and the answer, of course, is yes, we do. Let's talk about it. What you see on this slide right here is the big picture when it comes to automating leads, automating cases. And those are the only two objects that are supported, leads and cases, that support this bigger picture here. And there's a lot of little features that we need to set up to make this big picture right here. But let's talk about the big picture. Let's pretend like everything is set up, and then let's talk about what actually happens. So once everything is set up, then you will have a Web2Lead or Web2Case form. Think of it as the contact us form on your website, right? Pretty much all companies have websites nowadays. And on that website, pretty much all companies have a contact us form. And so in that contact us form, people go to that form and they fill in first name, last name, email address, and whatever other fields there are, filling all this information out, and then they hit the submit button. That's basically a Web2Lead or Web2Case form. It's a form on your website that people can go to. They fill in the information, they hit the submit button, and then that information will get sent to Salesforce, and Salesforce will either create a lead or it will create a case, depending on whether you use the Web2Lead or the Web2Case form. All right, but now we have a problem. Because remember, every record in Salesforce has to have an owner, and that is true for leads, and that is true for cases. So we actually can't just create the lead, or we can't just create the case, because it needs to be assigned to an owner. Now, typically, whenever or whoever is creating, whatever user is creating the record, that by default will be the owner. Now, in this particular case, no users were involved, right? Somebody went to our website and they hit the submit button, and all of this information was sent into Salesforce, and Salesforce automatically created this record. No users were involved. So who owns the record? Great question. This is exactly why we have the assignment rules. The assignment rules will route or will determine who the owner is. And a record can be owned by a user, you already know that, but a record could technically also be owned by a queue. Think of a queue as a virtual bucket where those cases and those leads are hopping basically into that virtual bucket. And a queue has queue members. The queue members now have ownership privileges over the records that are sitting in that queue. So think of the queue basically as the workaround if we wanted to assign a record to more than one user, right? Then we would create a queue. And then the queue members would be all of those users that would have ownership privileges to that record that is now sitting in the queue, or those many records that are sitting in the queue. All right, so the assignment rules will determine who owns the record. Records can only be owned either by users or by queues. Records cannot be owned by teams. Records cannot be owned by groups. Okay, it's users or queues. Hint, hint. All right, and then of course we want to let the customer know that we received their request and somebody will contact them shortly. And this is where the auto response rules kick in. And the auto response rules are using an email template that will be sent to whatever email address they filled in on the form. And so that is the big picture when it comes to automating leads or automating cases. Now, as I said, there's multiple puzzle pieces that we need to set up, one of them being the assignment rules. Now, you can only have one assignment rule active at any given time. However, each assignment rule has multiple rule entries. So what that means is when the lead comes in and it hits the assignment rules, then my first criteria rule entry might be region equals US. If this is true for this particular lead, then we want to assign it to the US sales team queue. But if this is not true, then and only then are we moving on to sort order number 2. When we're checking region equals EMEA. If the region does equal EMEA, we're sending it straight out to the EMEA sales team queue. If the region is not EMEA, then and only then are we moving on to sort order number 3, 4, 5, 10, 50, however many you have. And if all else fails, we're assigning it to the default lead owner. This right here sometimes is the reason why we cannot deactivate a user, right? The default lead owner always has to be an active user. Then we have the auto response rules, and the auto response rules kind of look very similar, but of course they do something very different. So you can only have one rule at any given time, but each rule can have multiple rule entries. But the auto response rule is sending out emails. It's not assigning or determining the owner of a record. So let's say the lead comes in, and if the lead, sort order number 1, criteria number 1, if the lead has the industry equals technology and the source equals web, if this is true, then we want to send the tech promo email. If this is not true, then we move on to sort order number 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 50, however many you have. And if all else fails, we'll just send out the default email template. Very generic. Thank you so much. Somebody will contact you shortly. All right. Now we have some additional tools, and those only work for cases. They don't even work for leads. And that is email to case, and the name kind of gives it away. You have a dedicated email address like support@companyname.com. And every time somebody is sending an email to that email address, it will automatically create a case. So we're basically turning that email into a case. That's why it's called email to case. And again, these are cases that are automatically created, which means that all our automation still works, meaning it triggers the assignment rules and the auto response rules, the escalation rules, workflow rules, processes, record triggered flows, like all of those fun things. Then we have the escalation rules. And again, escalation rules is for cases only, but the escalation rules are actually quite different from the other rules, like the assignment rules or the response rules, because the escalation rules, they don't do anything when a record is created. Nothing at all, okay? Whereas the assignment rules and the auto response rules, they only happen right at the very beginning when a record is created automatically. But escalation rules don't care when records are created, right? Nothing happens when a record is created because escalation rules always have to wait a certain period of time. The minimum time that the escalation rule waits is 30 minutes. That's the minimum. And then from there, you can go, hours and days if you wanted to. Now, the escalation rule can do two things. It first can reassign a case, not assign, but reassign. Because again, that certain period of time that we're waiting, during that time, those first 30 minutes, somebody has already owned or has to own that record. Otherwise, the record can't be created, right? So it's assigned, and that somebody is, I don't know, they're just not getting to it. They're like super busy and nothing is happening. So then we can reassign a case. We can change the owner of that case. That's the first thing an escalation rule can do. The second thing an escalation rule can do is we can notify a user, not the customer, okay, if the case is not dealt with within a certain period of time. So that's what an escalation rule can do. It waits, and then it either reassigns and or notifies internally. All right. Any questions to email to case or to the escalation rule? Okay, well then we have some additional tools. One is Omnichannel. And Omnichannel, think of it as assignment rules on steroids. So Omnichannel routes work requests, not just cases and leads, work requests to the most available and the most qualified support agent in the console. So it is actually looking if the agent is available, or maybe they're at lunch break right now, then we shouldn't be assigning anything to that user. Or maybe they're on vacation, we definitely shouldn't be assigning anything to that user. And then you can create skills and assign skills to users, and that is how Omnichannel would then identify qualified support agents, right? That could be by language, that could be subject matter experts for products, however you want to do it. And Omnichannel can consider that during the assignment. Then we have macros, and macros allow your users to automate their own steps that they need to do when they have repetitive tasks. So for example, when a knowledge article is identified and assigned to or associated with a case, then we still might need to send that knowledge article to the customer. Then we need to update the status field. Then we need to maybe set up a follow-up task so that we can follow up with the customer to double check if that knowledge article actually addressed the problem that they had. And that's a lot of steps. And so what you actually might want to do is just set up a macro. And so once the knowledge article is identified and attached to the case, then the user can say, go macro